The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
the president has a steep legal hill to climb here.
Yes, Lester, and that's because the Constitution's 14th Amendment isn't vague on this issue. Citizenship is automatic for anyone born on American soil.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
what do you think Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech?
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
they're pointing handguns at drivers in the vehicle right now.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, the president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
imagine if we had to go through the process of getting a judicial warrant to go and apprehend people who we know are here illegally.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
maybe more than 300 at this point. We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away
the president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
they certainly shouldn't have been carrying a gun.
When you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However,
President Trump is accusing 6 Democratic Congress members of being traitors. The lawmakers, who are all veterans, posted a video to social media calling on U.S. service members to refuse illegal orders. The president labeled that video as seditious behavior, punishable by death.
Okay, first off, obviously, thank you to refusefascism.org for putting out that compilation highlighting the glaring hypocrisy of Caroline Leavitt's words this morning. But when I saw that, I immediately thought of a comment that I keep getting over and over again, and also something that came up in the Indivisible What's the Plan call today. Okay, so in the last 2 days, I have talked about some really important rulings here in Oregon. The first is that a judge issued a temporary restraining order blocking federal agents from using chemical munitions, tear gas, pepper balls, etc., at the ICE facility here in Portland, Oregon. And then immediately the next day, there was a ruling that said across the state of Oregon, ICE cannot abduct people. They can't come and round people up without warrants. Essentially saying, no, federal agents, you cannot violate people's Fourth Amendment rights. And I got so many comments on both of those videos from people who are like, oh, okay, well, what good is that going to do? ICE and the Trump regime are just going to violate the TRO and they're going to go ahead and keep abducting people and not bothering to get warrants. Just so much like, oh, well, a lot of good that'll do. Court rulings don't even matter anymore. Why do we even bother? They're just going to break the law. Or like, oh, you sweet summer child, how naive of you to think that ICE agents are going to comply with this TRO and not immediately violate it. Right, just a lot of the repetition of the sentiment like, oh, well, fat lot of good that'll do. And I got a little bit frustrated with it. And I try to push back and say, hey, y'all, it's really important that we continue to utilize the courts. It's really, really important that we continue to demand that the law will be upheld. It's really important that we seek relief through the courts when our rights are violated. It doesn't mean that the regime is suddenly going to be like, oh, here's a TRO. Oh, here's one judge's ruling. Oh, we're just gonna give up on doing a fascism. You're right. Let's just go back to democracy and the rule of law. We're gonna lay down and give up and go ahead and prosecute us. Like nobody expects that is what is going to happen. Just like nobody expects one Saturday protest is going to get the fascists to lay down and surrender. That's not how fascism works. And I know I had people calling me naive, but I think it's very naive to believe that the minute the regime tramples the law, we suddenly pretend like the law no longer exists. That is how fascists advance their agenda. That's how they dismantle your rights, obliterate the Constitution. They try to claim a power that they do not have. They try to say a law no longer exists or that they have the right to violate it. And they wait to see how you respond. If you just say like, they're a bunch of lawbreakers and I guess they just get to break the law now, then the law goes poof. The law doesn't exist. I got really pissed off the other day on Blue Sky when people were saying, oh, the regime issued this memo saying they can conduct these warrantless arrests now. This is now a thing that the regime can do, that federal agents can do. And I was like, no, it's still a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Stop acting like a memo has more power than the Constitution. They're just saying, hey guys, go ahead and break the law. We all really, really have to acknowledge they are breaking the law. If we don't insist upon our rights, if we don't defend the rule of law, it ceases to exist. So it's really important to use the court systems, even if they are not going to readily obey. Even if they're not going to readily comply with the law. This is a really important part of the process of us defending democracy, slowing the regime down, and eventually stopping them, hopefully sooner rather than later. Think about the ways that Donald Trump and malignant narcissists in general, when confronted with evidence that they done fucked up, that they're not as smart as they thought they were, they made some kind of poorly calculated move. They can never accept blame, personal responsibility. They externalize blame. They put it on the expert and say, you're just an idiot. They tell some journalist, like, you're just an ugly woman. You're a mouthy woman, right? It's always externalizing blame. They cannot accept criticism. That's what's happening on a regime-wide level right now. The regime being criticized does not mean that they are going to accept that criticism and change their behavior. They're incapable of doing so. They only have one course. And that is escalating violence and desperately trying to get us all to give up. And we're not surrendering, so they're going to continue to fruitlessly pursue their authoritarian agenda. They're going to continue to violate the law every way they can. And that doesn't mean that we stop defending the rule of law. It makes it more important than ever that we are determined to point out the illegal things that we are doing and seek relief in any way that we can. Any legal means that we can. So this whole concept came up in the What's the Plan call today. And Ezra and Leah both had some pretty good insight. Someone said Trump is in beyond explosive rage phase. His polls say he's at his lowest, but his supporters are still agitating for him, and he acts like he's winning. He acts like he's super powerful. He acts like he can break any and every law and get away with it. Ezra replied, when you're in an authoritarian breakthrough moment, you kind of feel like shit every day. The regime will never admit that they are weak. They will never admit that they are losing their grasp on power. They will never de-escalate. They can only escalate, right? If you are somebody on the outside, it can look like we haven't weakened them at all. But Trump is incredibly weak. The regime is incredibly weak. They are so much weaker than they were 14 months ago. But they're never going to admit that. That's not how authoritarians work. It's like how you just saw J.D. Vance defending the awful, awful things that have been said about Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They're using the Joseph Goebbels propaganda handbook, which is lie, lie, lie some more, continue to lie. When someone tries to correct you on your lie, you double down on it. You never admit that you were wrong. It's lie and lie and lie until everybody believes it's the truth, and never apologize for lying. Never let your lies be corrected with the truth. They're going to keep breaking the law. They're never going to say, you're right, that was bad, our bad, we're going to stop doing that. They're never going to even admit that they broke the law. They're going to say, we have a right to do that. We can do whatever we want. That's how authoritarians work. It is the worst possible take right now to see them pull in that shit, breaking the law and be like, I guess they don't need a warrant now. I guess they're going to just break the law now. Ugh, they're never going to obey that TRO. No, we set the expectation. You have to obey the Constitution. We all need to be incredibly outraged if they violate a judge's orders. It's how we move right now. It's how we respond that matters. Otherwise, they will just take away those rights. They will obliterate those laws. We must defend them in order to continue to have them. None of these court rulings, none of our actions are going to get them to give up. That's not what defeats authoritarians. It slows down their advancement, and it maintains democratic expectations, democratic norms. It reminds us that we actually have a constitution, we actually have laws, and we, the American people, deserve to have the government not violate them, not violate our rights, not violate our bodies. So please, when you hear them breaking the law, don't presume that they just get to do that. In fact, be outraged, be livid, be incensed, take action. We only have rights if we exercise them. We only have laws if we defend them.